Lento Feiner, having become a monster after being eaten by a dragon, seeks to attain other life forms closer to humans through existential evolution. However, he cannot let people find out about him, as he is the very thing the hunters target in the labyrinth. How long will he be able to keep his secret, and just how powerful can he get with his evolving? As he evolves, is he going to lose his humanity? Lento Feiner, a bronze-class adventurer from the city of Malt, is one of the people that hunt monsters like skeletons and goblins in the two labyrinths close to the city, Labyrinth of the Reflected Moon and Labyrinth of the New Moon. The adventurers hunt these monsters and sell them to the guild in exchange for food. While Lento is a bronze class, as he has been for 10 years, there are higher classes like silver, gold, platinum, and the highest, mithril. While Lento is not skilled enough to attain these ranks, he doesn't give up and continues to go on missions. After completing his latest quest, Lento looks out for his next quest in the Labyrinth of the Reflected Moon. A huge surprise awaits him, and he doesn't know it yet, but it would change his life forever. As he explores the labyrinth looking for more low-ranked monsters to defeat, he suddenly discovers an uncharted territory that is not present on the map. Full of curiosity, Lento steps into the unfamiliar pathway without even thinking twice. Who knows what could be in there? It might be a huge discovery, or at least fetch some money. There's a discovery alright, but it's far beyond what Lento expects. He hears a terrifying voice in the new path and is forced to look up. There it is, just standing. A dragon. You've got to be kidding me. A bronze-class adventurer is up against a dragon? A dragon is said to be closer to a god than a creature. A stunned Lento is unable to move, however hard he tries, due to the pressure of the dragon's magical powers. As expected, Lento is no match for the dragon. It soon swallows him and takes him to his end. Or not. A few moments later, Lento wakes up and the dragon is gone. He is conscious of being eaten by the dragon, but still has his memory and consciousness with him. Is this what being dead feels like? And that's when he notices something. His physical body is completely changed and is now made up of just bones. He finally changed classes like he always wanted, but instead of becoming a powerful gold or platinum warrior, he became a skeleton. Lento the Hunter becomes part of the class of the Hunted. He also discovers that he's unable to talk as his vocal ability is impaired due to the monster class. Am I even dead or alive? He doesn't know for sure. He thinks about being condemned to the fate of forever being a skeleton and just waiting to be killed. Then he remembers something he learned previously: existential evolution. Existential evolution is a quality monsters possess that lets them absorb magic energy from the monsters they defeat at a much faster and more efficient rate than humans. He remembers that Lorraine, a companion of his back in the city, gave him this information. Basically, by defeating other monsters, he could evolve into other life forms much more similar to humans. Lento lets out a sigh, but only in his mind, as skeletons don't have the slightest vocal ability. He decides the only option for him is existential evolution. And so, Lento Feiner begins his quest to obtain existential evolution, without an idea of how much magic energy he needs from monsters to attain his needed level. He discovers that in addition to being unable to speak, he also has a very rigid body, so experiences difficulty in moving. I mean, all bones and no muscle, right? On the other hand, he seems to have more abilities than normal skeletons, as he retained his human energy and abilities. There are 3 energies among men and monsters: magic, allowing one to control the elements; vitality, also called chakra or prana, which strengthens physical abilities and helps obtain inhuman stamina; and lastly, spirit, a rare energy usually available only to religious personnel. Lento has all 3 energies, as he obtained spirit through a blessing from religious personnel while he was still human. With these energies, facing the other monsters is much easier than facing them as a human. He defeats monsters and obtains their energies, getting stronger after every battle. Face to face with the slime monster, a monster that is dangerous through the release of acid blitz, Lento is faced with a challenge but defeats the monster by aiming for its core. Lento looks at the raw materials obtained from the slime and wishes he could get out there and sell the materials to the guild. As he looks on, he suddenly begins to experience something new. He begins to add flesh and can make sounds. He evolves into a ghoul, his first existential evolution. While still taken back by the change in his body, he hears the sound of swords in the distance. Looks like somebody else is there. Even though it's only been a few days, Lento feels like it's been more than that since he last saw a human. However, he stops himself from being seen by the fighting human. It's a girl. He confirms his suspicion about human presence. The girl is in a fight with the skeleton monster and is barely keeping up. At this rate, she would probably be a bone meal in no time. Lento doesn't recognize her, and recognizing people at the guild is one of his greatest skills. So he concludes that she's a beginner. What would a beginner be doing in the Labyrinth of the Reflected Moon, and without any company? As she is about to become a bone meal, Lento is forced to make one more rash decision, as he rushes in to save her. With just one strike, he's able to bring the skeleton down, a feat that is surprising to both himself and the female young warrior. He then tries to talk to her and explain the situation, since ghouls find it easier to make sounds than skeletons. He tries to communicate with her, but it proves a little more difficult than he would have wanted. However, the warrior is a smart lady and manages to decode his intention. Slowly yet steadily, he tells her his identity as an adventurer and how he became what he is. He then asks the half-excited, half-terrified lady for a favor. "Get me some clothes?" Recognizing that this ghoul just saved her life and knowing his intention, she agrees to return the favor by helping him. And so, Rina Lapaug, the young warrior, sets back out to the city of Malt Guild. Meanwhile, at the city, Sheila Ibalsa, a guild employee, is very worried about not seeing Lento for days. This is the same Lento that comes there every day, at the same time to start studying. While still in her thoughts, Rina Lapaug arrives to obtain information about the stores around, so she could carry out the task from Lento. She could betray Lento by giving the information to the guild, but she chooses not to. After all, she did owe him her life. Meanwhile, back at the labyrinth, Lento continues to get stronger by defeating more monsters. At this point, he's lost track of the number he's defeated, since his newfound strength has made it so easy. Done with the monsters, he feels a tap on his shoulder. It's Rina, and she's there with the clothes he requested. Having practiced his speech while she was gone, he can effectively communicate with her, expressing his gratitude. He tries the clothes on, and luckily, they are a perfect fit. The clothes are able to hide everything except for his face. However, the quick-thinking Rina is one step ahead, bringing out a mask that he could use to hide it. It makes sense since some adventurers hide their injuries from monsters with these kinds of masks. Lento puts the mask on, and again, it's a perfect fit. It's almost like it's stuck to his face. Maybe it is. He tries to take it off, but it doesn't come off. Turns out that the mask is from a seller who gave it to Rina for a very low price, a cursed mask. Lento tries to use the spirit energy to get rid of the curse. Even though his ability is stronger than it was, he's still unable to take the mask off. He concludes that only a high-class clergyman can take it off. Oh well, he needed the mask anyway. He, together with Rina, sets out to the city. The security at the gate is tight, but they are able to lie their way through the suspicious guards since none of them could take off his cursed mask. Cursed, or lucky. Despite needing a human companion, he decides not to risk Rina's life and says goodbye to her even though she doesn't want to. After considering his options, he concludes that he needs someone shadier than Rina, and if he wants to survive in his current condition, someone trustworthy, who can help him and probably needs his help. This train of thought leads him to the house of Lorraine, his companion. "Come in, Lento." How does she know it's him? After settling in, Lento narrates his story to Lorraine. Even with the evidence being right in front of her, Lento's changed body, she's hardly able to believe the story, especially with the involvement of a dragon. However, as she and Lento go way back, she takes his word for it. She agrees to help him, but on one condition. She asks for information and updates from every adventure, and resource materials to help with her research. Lento agrees to these terms. After a while, Lento is back on the field and discovers that his sword is pretty much damaged. The sword, after all, is an extension of its owner. Apparently, it's for a lot of things, but not for that level of power and energy from a creature of his kind. Deciding to get a new one, he sets out to the only blacksmith that he knows, the three-pronged harpoon. In the blacksmith's place is a lady, Luca, and a master Clove. He doesn't reveal his identity to them, but instead requests a specific kind of sword that could handle his three energies. They come to a deal where he needs to wait a while for the new sword, and they give him a temporary sword to use. Even though he doesn't tell Luca and Clove his identity, they recognize him through his field, the same way Lorraine knew he was at the door. They don't say anything, however, as they feel he must have his reasons, and he sets out. On his way back, he sees another adventurer, a man who is cornered by a slime monster. Monster body and human mind, he swoops in regardless to save the day. The terrified man thanks him and introduces himself as a restaurant manager. He's not even an adventurer. The manager, Loris Caliero, asks to follow Lento and pick up from his monster scraps so he could sell to the guild and save his restaurant. After weighing the pros and cons, Lento agrees and sets out with his new companion. Taking a break from the main events of the story, we actually go to a side story about the scientist, Lorraine Vivier. After having obtained her professor degree at 14, a bored Lorraine sneaks out from the Imperial City to see the world. She ends up in the city of Malt where she asks to register with the Union. Since she's a professor and a silver rank adventurer, they allow her but assign her a companion first. That's how she gets to meet Lento. Thinking Lento, the bronze-ranked adventurer, would slow her down, she soon discovers and learns a lot from him, and learns to see the world through a different perspective after meeting him. It's been 10 years since then, and 10 years later, when Lento goes missing, she's quite relieved when she feels his presence and hears him knock at the door. Going back to the present, Lento leads Loris Caliero into the labyrinth of the reflected moon. He leads him back to the uncharted location where he met the dragon. Loris is as surprised as Lento was, seeing nothing about the location on the map. They go in and Lento looks around without luck for the dragon. Just as they're about to give up, they find another path which leads to a dead end. To humans at least. Lento looks at where Loris is standing and sees a magic circle there. Before he's able to do anything, Loris is transported to an unknown place as the circle is a teleport circle. Knowing how dangerous it probably is, Lento jumps in to save his weak companion, and he's not mentally prepared for what he sees, a giant skeleton. With no other choice, Lento has to fight the skeleton. He notices that while it's stronger than him, he has the advantage of speed. To defeat the skeleton, he needs to use his spirit energy along with the others, a power which his current sword isn't able to handle and can't take more than once. What this means is that he only has one chance to strike. Dodging the powerful monster's attacks, he bids his time, waits for an opening, and then delivers a powerful strike, sending the giant skeleton down. After breaking the skeleton into pieces, he confirms that luckily, Loris Caliero is still alive and breathing. After defeating such a high-class monster and absorbing its energy, is it finally time for another existential evolution to occur? And what changes will he see this time? After defeating the giant skeleton, he proceeds to heal up an injured Loris who just happened to regain consciousness. After healing him as well as leaving him in shock and awe, as he wondered just what Lento is, Lento hands him a magic stone, explaining that the reason he came into the labyrinth was truly what he said: money. He could have it as it went for about 15 gold coins, way more than he had expected to get, but not for free as Lento had some conditions to be met. He wants to see the type of man Loris is and follows him to the city. On getting to the city and soon Loris' house, Loris introduces him to his wife after her worried welcome. Loris continues to explain their situation as a family and business in the city, as their shop is located in a not so crowded area of the city. Lento could agree to this as he never knew a stall was there until now. Down to business, he made known his conditions. First, he revealed his skin to them, explaining some part of the truth that he was gotten by a monster on some quest, and next, he asks them to keep this a secret as well as give him meals whenever he comes there for free. Shocked and filled with disbelief as they expected and readied themselves for something more gruesome or evil-natured, they soon return to reality and gleefully accept Lento's deal. Soon after, he heads over to Lorraine's, but as he journeyed, he grew this strange thirst for blood, that he lost control and couldn't keep it in check. With his human consciousness suppressed and on this impulse, he gets to Lorraine's. She's absent-minded and buried in research, and familiar with Lento, she doesn't pay much attention to his arrival until he ambushes her from behind, craving for her flesh. Lento, who had just lost grip on human consciousness, bit into Lorraine's neck, feeding his monster impulse with their blood and surprising her as well. After the desire and urge die down a bit, Lento regains himself for a fraction of time, which Lorraine uses a window of opportunity to blast him off her with the spell 40 of Boravas, which knocked him out almost immediately. She remarks that she would accept his apology when he wakes up and went off to tame the damage her spell made. After some time, Lento wakes up with little recollection of what he had done while Lorraine calls out to him, sensing he's awake. Hearing Lorraine's voice calms him as he was now sure she survived. He apologizes for his actions and offers to heal Lorraine's neck injury, to leave little to no scar on her skin. As they let bygones be bygones and Lorraine forgives him, she set out to observe him and reason out what he might truly be. After much consideration of the knowledge they know, she concludes that Lento has evolved yet again, from a ghoul to a zombie. She also cleverly postulates that evolution in monsters is dependent on the amount of magic and the person or being it takes place in. Also, the different classes of these are differentiated by these two same factors. For instance, the vampire family, containing the members familiars, zombies, and low-level vampires. As they converse, she notices his mask was moving, regaining its original shape and covering Lento's jaw. On close observation, they discover that the mask is cursed, but also acts with respect to the desires and consciousness of the wearer. This is because Lento didn't do anything but think about wanting his jaw to be covered, which caused the mask to reassemble. Lorraine guesses the mask might be an intention tool given its actions. An intention tool is an unusually special tool that chooses its wielder. It is rare to produce, then acquire, as the technology of the time had no prospects of such. It is found in hidden places in the labyrinth and has the ability to manipulate people's consciousness. She also postulates that evolution not only occurs as a result of magic quantity, but is also affected by the organism's desires. Lento was able to transform from skeleton to ghoul, which naturally defied the evolution chain, because he desired flesh on his skin and a human-like appearance. The ghoul, being the closest to this description, was all he could think about, hence the change to it. The same applies to his thirst for blood and hunger for flesh, explaining why he turned to a zombie. She makes him agree to begin experiments, and more discoveries and postulates were made. The mask can move to cover the top region of his face, the jaw region, and the total face with respect to the will of the wearer. His skin was also responsive towards medical potions and drugs, but inert to poison. He also acquired the ability to thirst and hunger for food, which he lacked as a skeleton, also giving him an appetite of 3 times the average person. Though, a drop of human blood would give him equivalent sustenance, so Lorraine gave him a vial of her blood laced with preservation magic. Next, he decides to take a quest from the guild in his original name, but Lorraine advises against it, saying it would draw much less attention at the guild if he went in as a new adventurer and started rank building all over. He takes the advice and heads to the guild. Registering his name, he instinctively uses his surname, and in a bid to ward all suspicion from Sheila, he nervously uses Lorraine's, making it worse. Fortunately, he was able to avoid suspicion by claiming to be Lorraine's distant relative. After getting registered as an adventurer, he sets out to close but soon bumps into a knight, who apologizes and on confirming his status as an adventurer, asks if he's seen a girl named Rena. Lento remembers Rena, but just to be safe asks for his. The knight introduces himself as a knight in Yarland Kingdom, Knight's First Order, Idris Log. Lento knows he has met Rina Lupog, but the one his knight is searching for is Rina Log. He decides to act like he hasn't met anyone by that name, just to save Rina, in the case that she was running away or hiding from someone, or most likely wasn't the person in question. They both bade each other farewell and Lento went to Clove's. At Clove's swordsmith shop, he turns in his worn out sword, which leaves Clove surprised. Lento then explains that he had no choice but to use spirit with the sword given that he was facing a giant skeleton. Realizing he was truly in a fix, Clove collects the sword and gives him a replacement as his desired sword isn't fully made yet. Before he hands Lento the replacement, he asks Lento to explain why he needed to go back as he had already defeated the giant skeleton. Lento affirms that indeed the conclusion that he had defeated the skeleton was correct, but there is a second gate and he would love to explore it, for the hidden treasures that might be present and the safety of guild members that would later go in through the gate. He leaves the shop and heads on to explore the labyrinth through the second transfer gate. Passing through the gate, he enters a strange room with the door at the end of it. Curious as any adventurer would, he goes through the door where he sees signs of residence and a long one at best. He soon sees a skeleton with a bouquet on it, which would give the natural idea that that was the inhabitant of the room until a strange presence suddenly makes itself known at Lento's back. He felt the same fear he did when he faced the dragon, as he lost control of his body and could not move. The presence asks Lento why he was there and what he was doing. Lento tries to explain that he was just searching around and exploring, but the person misunderstood and took him for a bandit, and using a magical spell, she attacks him and requests that he vanishes along with the effects of the spell, which apparently should have a ghastly effect. Lorraine casually sits out in the city, waiting to meet up with the date she had promised attention a while back. Soon enough, she leaves to meet the man, and Lento stalks and watches over her from a distance to make sure she was safe, judging the man's every move. The pair head into an alley, and the man pulls out a knife and puts it against her throat. The man cuts her clothes to molest her, showing his intentions, but she controls ropes to tie him up in self-defense, and after a little display of her power, he passes out from the shock of her abilities as a silver rank adventurer and a middle tier at that. Though she defended herself, she lost control a little, causing havoc in the city, which Lento cautions her to be mindful of, reminding her she's beautiful and should be wary of blind dates. Back in the labyrinth, the spell doesn't deal much damage to Lento due to his current state, but its effects were not insignificant. The spell causes Lento's clothing to burn into the air, revealing his skin and nature, causing the strange person to back down a bit and reveal herself. She apologizes to Lento, explaining that she thought he stumbled upon the room from one of his raids as a bandit, and that was why she attacked. Now she realizes he came in through the transfer gate, which wasn't a normal place bandits would use. She gives him her robe in exchange for his burnt clothes, and further explains that the room they are in is very important to her, and she would love it if he told no one what has transpired here. Lento didn't fully like the idea of this, as he would have to report something to Lorraine in the guild. The strange girl sensed that he needed compensation and hands him a map, the map of Akashi. The map of Akashi is a map that automatically maps the labyrinth section that its owners have stepped foot into, giving real-time status information and updates down to even how many people or presences are there. It is an invaluable tool for dungeon and labyrinth exploration. After she hands him this, in an instant, he teleports to the entrance of the labyrinth, and he takes that as a cue to go. So he left for Lorraine's. On getting to Lorraine's, he explains everything he had encountered, leaving out the location of the room solely because Lorraine is shocked by the new look and the coat, and also by how suddenly these changes happened. After informing and showing Lorraine the map and the coat's perks, he decided to go back to the room in the labyrinth as the conversation earlier was a little one-sided, and he would love to talk to her again. Also, the girl never mentioned anything about him not coming back to the room, but unfortunately, on getting there, he finds the door to the room non-existent. Though downcast and beginning to appreciate his pitiable situation, he's surrounded by 3 monsters which he easily takes out, stealing his resolve to achieve his dream of becoming a mithril adventurer. Taking on a new quest from the guild, he faces an orc on his new quest, as the quest entails him delivering orc meat as they are rare and dangerous but highly delectable sources of meat. After a fierce battle, he beheads the orc, butchers, and ties it up for carrying. Soon, he notices noise from a distance and, on investigation, sees 2 more orcs, so he kills them, butchers, and packs them up as well, completing his quest. While using the map of Akashi on his way home, he notices the presence of a duo in the labyrinth of the New Moon and decides to check them out. On getting there, he saw a duo, a team of a boy and girl adventurer, one an attacker and the other a healer. Observing that they could handle the situation on their own, he left for Lorraine's. Lorraine asks how his quest went, and he got permission from the guild union to use the map and explore uncharted areas. Here, Lento informs Lorraine what transpired at the guild between him and the advisor, Sheila, who has acknowledged him and his participatory status for the copper rank promotion exams, wishing him good luck on the exams. The promotional exams have 2 stages, the first being the theoretical phase and the practical coming next. Though the number of candidates was plentiful, the theoretical exam helps reduce the number of those viable for the real exams. The practical, which from its name tests the practical experience of the adventurers. The candidates are divided into groups to test teamwork and coordination as well. Lento ends up in a group of 3, consisting of the 2 adventurers he had come across earlier and himself. They introduce themselves as the male swordsman, Rise Dunner, and the female mage, Laura Sati. After greetings and introductions have been made, the guild official continues with the briefing. The exam was to get into a designated area of the labyrinth of the new moon, the first floor precisely. Any means could be used and anything goes. The adventurers were given maps and they set out to begin their exam at the labyrinth. Though Laura and Rise were wary of Lento due to his aura and overall appearance, they have no other choice than to cooperate with Lento as passing the exam was their major priority. On getting to the city of the labyrinth, they try using the map to find their way but are having a hard time. Then, Lento notices an inconspicuous man who he suspects is a map seller. He informs them they'll have to get a map as the one they were given by the guild was outdated. The guild did this to misdirect adventurers as early as possible. On confronting the man, it turns out Lento's suspicions were true and he indeed had detailed and current maps of the labyrinth. He offers a large price which Lento haggles down to its actual worth, 5 copper coins. The seller hands them the map, commending Lento's perception and wishes them luck in the exams. With this new map, they spot the differences and find it easier to navigate the labyrinth of New Moon as they enter it to begin their exams. In a wide area of the labyrinth, a multitude of skeletons attack the trio and they get into formation. Rise as the vanguard fending off skeletons, Lento as a middle guard, protecting Laura as they both buy enough time for her to chant spells capable of wiping out the skeletons in entirety, but it does take a while to be chanted. They take out most of the skeletons, but more kept coming due to the incense used to attract monsters, making the numbers overwhelming. They managed to get away, but suddenly Lento senses humans and the dots connected. They were most likely bad adventurers looking to reduce the competition. The trio managed to fend off sudden attacks from these adventurers. Lento was used to the fact that there were bad adventurers who care more about removing competition than finishing quests or exams for varying reasons. But Laura and Rise weren't familiar with this. With much effort from Lento and the others, they were able to subdue the attackers, knock them out, and tie them up. After consideration, the trio decide to leave them there and continue their exams, as guild officials would save them before the attackers were eaten by monsters. Continuing their exams, they meet more skeletons which they have no trouble defeating before finally reaching the designated area. Thanks to the map, they were the first to locate the area as they had little trouble with the efficient map. Later on, a group of 4 adventurers arrive and begin to bully the group, as well as tease Lara while they were at it. Lento, in a threatening way, protects the group and gives way for the adventurers to go first, while they rest and watch. Soon enough, the group was kicked out of the area, and not in good shape. Lento and the others decide to go in, even though a lot of adventurers were in hiding, waiting, and watching. They enter the boss area where they kept their guard up, seeing a slime core at the center of the room. Wondering how the boss is a little slime, they were mistaken as slime fluid from the holes in the room collected, forming a grand slime, giving it a giant size that matches its core. The bout begins as the slime rains acid bullets, the usual attack, but this time, 10 times the usual amount. Lento notices the guild officials watching as they examine for the ability to coordinate actions and attacks with teammates, as well as how well impromptu teams can work together. They get into the agreed formation, protecting Laura from the acid bullets. Lento asks her how long it would take for her to cast a spell that would completely melt the slime's liquid, making its core vulnerable and exposing it to attack. She estimates 5 minutes for the liquid volume and the one around its core, 2 minutes. Rise holds the slime's attacks off and Lento protects her from the bullets as she chants. Laura, after successfully chanting, uses Grand Blaze to completely vaporize the slime, creating the opening for Rise's attack on its core, defeating the monster. After this, the other adventurers rush in the bid to be the first to get past the room, but Lento and Laura take their time collecting slime fluids to surprise Rise. Lento explains to Rise that all these rushing did so at their peril as the vapor of the slime gives the same effect as sleeping gas. Laura clears the gas with a breeze, exposing the now asleep candidates who didn't make it through. With clearer air, they calmly walk into an area with 2 rooms, a fake one and a real one. With the help of the map, they enter the real one, meeting a guild staff. The staff congratulates them on being the first to get there and making it so far and hands them potions and badges they are meant to submit at the guild station. He also advises they don't get overeager and those that took this at surface level would regret it. After a dangerous return trip which seemed harder than their initial journey, they got to the guild office and successfully submit their badges. Soon enough, a man who had been following them since the beginning of their exams walks in and hands the report of the exam. He explains that his role was to watch the behaviors of adventurers and grades. In the absence of any murder, theft, or ill actions, he and all the guild officials present congratulate them on passing the exams. Lento thanks Rise and Laura, saying that he had learned so much from them but they felt it was the other way around. After exchanging pleasantries, they promised to go on an adventure together if their goals were ever similar, and they left. Sheila approaches Lento, commenced leaving duo, and then hints that she's aware he's the old Lento, asking if he could spare some time to talk. Meanwhile, during the exams, the guild official who's watching them all along discussed with other staff how the monitoring would go in the boss area, talking about how to slip in and out. After that, he unties the human attackers who turned out to be employees of the guild, made to do the dirty work of testing the newbies through an attack. One of the men who had been acquainted with the old Lento notices that Rent had the same aura and presence that he had. He was also stronger than his teammates and the average newbie, though he brushed it off as the old Lento wasn't as strong as he is now. He asked the examiner to keep an eye on him. They leave to continue their job after the examiner informs them that Lento was able to detect his presence and even their roles in the exams. Back at the guild office, Sheila speaks to Lento, asking his reason for doing a double registration and curious about what had happened to him, given their relationship was more of a friendly one. Due to the severe actions the guild would have to take, Lento refuses to tell her what happened, politely accepting the consequences that the guild had for double registration, which included expulsion from the guild. Even at the risk of her job as a guild official, Sheila informs Lento that she didn't report the registration as she knew he had a valid reason for whatever he was doing, and also losing him would be a big blow to her and the Guild of Malt, given his contributions to their success. She then uses a magic contract, binding her to secrecy and with a heavy penalty of even quitting the guild and being his slave if she broke it. Seeing this seal, Lento had no choice but to disclose his experiences and changes as they walk over to Lorraine's, telling her everything that had happened. Lorraine, seeing the unexpected guest, welcomes them both and asks why Sheila is with him. Sheila informs her that Lento told her all that has happened, and in the bid to see how much she knew and how trustworthy Sheila was, Lorraine decides to test her with a little scare, pointing a knife at Sheila's throat, claiming the rumors of Lorraine being a witch could be true. She also tells Sheila that Lento dug into her neck while he was a zombie. After hearing all this, Sheila still shows her stern resolve to help Lento in any way she could. This is because the feelings of indebtedness and vexation from not being able to help Lento through whatever this is, after all he had done for her, was more than her feelings of fear of being in danger. She reaffirms that she's willing to help and do anything for Lento's sake. Lorraine, seeing she could be trustworthy, apologizes for testing her and invites her to join them for dinner. They enjoy their meal as Sheila compliments Lento for being a good cook, saying she just confirmed what she has been hearing. Lorraine goes further to say living with Lento is the best life as he could do all the housework efficiently. Lorraine then remembers the guy from the exams they mentioned, whom Sheila introduces to her little brother, meaning they could trust him. Lento is also curious as to why there were so many examiners among the newbies, and Sheila explains that it was because a few newbies have gone missing in the mazes without any trace. This meant it was not of natural death, and there was a culprit as the weapons, badges, and belongings of the adventurers would not be absorbed by the maze, even when their bodies are. Due to this, they also ask Lento to lay low on quests and guild activities for a while, as he is the most suspicious looking person at present. Lorraine then remembers that a letter had come from Luca saying that Lento's sword was ready. She informs him and he heads over to Chloe's workshop to pick it up. On getting there, Luca asks him to test the sword out at the workshop, as he had never witnessed a vitality magic combo user, not to mention an individual using all three. Lento tests out each of the three skills with logs of wood, which give varying impacts. He then tries the vitality magic combo, which was pretty good. He tries to do all three, but before he does, Luca doubts the sword would be able to endure the force, so he hands him the replacement instead. Adding spirit to the magic vitality combo, but struggling to hold control over the energy building up, the sword begins to crack as it could not bear the pressure of the insurmountable energy. Due to the magical pressure, the sword loses its integrity as it cracks, creating a vortex of unbelievable energy. With little option left, he has to either control the vortex or send it to the target log of wood. Unable to control this energy, he shoots it at the log of wood, and the energy from the vortex was strong enough to compress the log, turning it into a wooden sphere. Luca believes the new sword would as well not bear the pressure, but Lento is motivated to develop his power. Not wanting to dissuade Lento, he gives him an alternative, using throwing knives to practice control, but even this yield above poor results. He tried the magic vitality combo with the new sword, and it works perfectly, so he gets eager to try out his new power on his quest, though he has to lay low for a while following Sheila and Lorraine's advice for obvious reasons. After a few weeks, he gets a voluntary quest from an orphanage with the sick sister as the head. The orphanage is run by a teenage girl named Elise. While she's sick, Elise welcomed Lento into the orphanage, and after introductions were made, she took him to Sister Lillian and explains her illness. He then realizes the need for the quest as Sister Lillian, a spirit user, had been affected by miasma and needed potions from a certain flower, the dragon blood flower, to fully recover. His accepted quest is to retrieve this rare but highly sought after flower from its habitat, which was the main problem or danger on this quest, the Swamp of Tarask. A solid land area surrounded by poisonous swamps and lakes. Will Lento be able to pull off this so awaited but voluntary quest to save Sister Lillian, or will he perish and end his dream? To save Lillian's life, Elise puts forward the request to Lento. He has to go to the Swamp of Tarask to find and retrieve the dragon blood flower. Of course, she wouldn't blame him if he backs out. After all, it's a very dangerous quest. Much to her surprise and relief, Lento agrees to take it. Since Lillian is unaware of the actual quest, they decide to carry out the mini-quest in the basement first. Shouldn't be that big of a deal. At most, it'd be the Puchisuri. A Puchisuri is a mouse-turned-monster. Just as he suspected, the basement monsters are Puchisuri. Oh well, let's get this over with. He takes out his dagger and begins to fight these mice. He notices there is one mouse that stands out among them. It seems to be the biggest and the most agile. Not a problem, or at least it shouldn't be. He realizes that Elise is behind him, unprotected, so he fights the monsters while simultaneously protecting Elise. This causes a distraction and leaves an opening. The leader of the mice quickly rushes at him, and he's able to punch the large mouse away, but not before it bites his skin and draws out blood. Lento isn't too shaken by the bite, but the mouse looks to be more affected. Twisting and turning, the creature is in pain for a while, then is suddenly back to normal. At first, Lento doesn't realize what just happened, but then he starts to feel an unfamiliar sensation. A pathway is created between him and the zombie, and it now becomes his familiar creature. Vampires can turn creatures into their familiar by injecting them with their blood. Zombies, a lower vampire class, also have that ability. He tests his newfound ability by ordering the mouse to control the other mice in the basement. The mouse gets to it, and soon, the basement is as clear as anyone would have it. With that, he leaves the orphanage, of course with his new companion, and returns to Lorraine. He narrates everything to Lorraine, and as expected from the scientist, she is enthusiastic. She asks for permission to do little experiments on the mouse, and Lento, who can communicate directly with it, obtains its permission. Of course, they have to name it, so they settle on Edel. Its name is Edel. The sun rises and it's a new day. Lento needs to attend to his quest soon. After all, most swamp monsters are nocturnal and won't be out during the day. He walks in on Lorraine making a meal, a surprisingly rare occurrence. He is strangely attracted to the meal despite not needing to eat as a monster. Edel is also attracted by the meal and comes to get its share. Lorraine doesn't even know how to cook, so what makes the meal so delicious? After the meal, Lorraine reveals that her blood is in the food. It was an experiment all along. Sneaky Lorraine. He and Edel set out to the swamp. They're transported by a carriage whose rider doesn't dare to approach it. After all, the swamp is deadly and poisonous to humans, but Lento is no human and poisons don't affect him. Lorraine made sure of this during an experiment. A magic tool or a spirit user could also fight against the poison, but both he and Edel are well equipped against it. Thanks to Edel's timely warning, he's able to dodge an incoming arrow just in time. Okay, Edel seems to be much more useful than at first thought. He looks back and sees a goblin, then sees another. A quick look around him and he sees 10 goblins surrounding him with their arrows. 10 goblins should scare a normal human being, but for Lento, fun. Quickly but skillfully, he takes out the goblins and drops them all to the ground. He notices that the goblins have dragon blood flower leaves sewn to their clothes. That's how they neutralize the poison. The entire swamp is filled with creatures that adapt to the poison. Eyes back on the road, Lento sees a bridge that Edel is more than eager to get through. Following Edel's instincts, Lento goes through the bridge too. Halfway through, they are attacked by sharks and drawn to the water. He can barely fight in there, but he manages to chase the sharks away with spirit and gets to land. He sees Edel chewing tree nuts and is so angry that he doesn't notice the gigantic monster in front of them. Huge body, 6 legs, hard scales, and poisonous fog. The monster standing in front of Lento is a Tarrasque, the monster whom the swamp is named after. Crap. Lento has no choice but to fight. He tries close combat with the Tarrasque using the advantage of speed, and when he senses an opening, he goes in for the kill. The toughness of its scales is even more than Lento previously thought. It feels like pure metal. To put some distance between itself and Lento, the Tarrasque begins to roll its scales on the ground, causing some sort of earthquake and sending Lento backwards. This isn't some wild, aimlessly destructive monster. It's an intelligent life form that can adapt to different situations. Due to the Tarrasque's abilities, Lento sees no choice but to play his wild card. He gathers spirit, magic, and vitality into his sword and delivers the killer blow. Or at least he thinks so. Barely affected, the Tarrasque can get up and create some distance again. What kind of monster is this? Lento is rooted to the spot, almost hopeless. He suddenly feels energy draining from his body, and looks up and sees Edel charging towards the Tarrasque. Is this little guy out of his mind? Surprisingly though, Edel's attack seems effective against the Tarrasque. That's when he notices that Edel is using spirit to attack instead of using all 3 energies combined. Edel is knocked down by the powerful Tarrasque, but Lento has already discovered all he needs to do against it. Meanwhile, Edel uses Lento's spirit to heal. Is there a limit to what they share? The Tarrasque, in a bid to end the battle, breathes out his poisonous fog at Lento. Lento is unaffected by the fog, but it also gives him a chance to strike, as the Tarrasque's guard is let down. Quickly, using spirit, Lento goes in for the strike. If this doesn't work, I don't know what will. As Lento attacks the Tarrasque with that move, he directs all his spirit energy into that one strike. If it doesn't work out, he and Edel are definitely in trouble. After the strike, there's a blinding light everywhere, so no one knows what's going on. All you can do is hope, and hope Lento did. The lights and fog clear out, and Lento sees his adversary down on the ground, defeated and dead. Naturally, his body starts to absorb the magic of the Tarrasque, but as expected, he doesn't evolve. Maybe there is a requirement needed to evolve, like with the ghoul. Oh well, he proceeds to take his loot, the remains of his conquered enemy, and he's happy that he half expected to face a big monster and brought a large storage capacity for the loot. He looks ahead and sees a bridge since the Tarrasque isn't usually far from the flower. That must be where the dragon blood flower is. The dragon blood flower is a cure-all because of its force and location. When grown in another location, it becomes a white flower and loses its medicinal properties. It only becomes a cure-all red flower by sucking up the poison of the swamp and purifying it with its life force. The Tarrasque coexists with the dragon blood flower as it purifies the poison from the Tarrasque and uses the poison as a growth foundation. Lento, together with Edel, crosses the bridge and gets to the location of the flower. It's like a whole new ecosystem. Beautiful. For a place that exists in the swamp of Tarask, Lento finds the field of dragon blood flowers. Unbelievable. I would too. The field is filled with different birds, insects, plants, and other creatures that aren't in the outside world. Here they form a pure ecosystem but cannot leave the field, as they would immediately die from the poison. Lento decides to take one stalk only so the creatures don't get hurt. As he's about to take it, he senses something or someone. It looks like they are not alone. I wasn't expecting a visitor, says a voice from behind him. He turns and sees a man in the field. Lento talks with the strange man and finds out that he is named Isaac Halt and isn't an adventurer. How strange. Isaac Halt says he reached the swamp with the help of antidotes, magic potions, and holy water that wards off the Tarask. He introduces himself as a butler, whose master is ill and needs the flowers to live. Thankfully, there's a whole field of them and the men don't have to fight. Isaac Halt suggests the need to personally request Lento for future quests, and he agrees. Before leaving, Isaac gives him some holy water that enables him to leave the swamp without being attacked by the Tarask. It is given as a friendly gesture and well received by Lento. A few days later, Lento returns to the orphanage with the dragon blood flower. The potion healer Norman Hanley examines the flower and finds out they are pure samples. With this, he can prepare an effective medicine for the sick Lillian. Seeing the good work of the healer, Lento unselfishly offers the rest of his flowers to Norman, and without asking for a dime. Norman is surprised at the gift as he is thankful. A little while later, Elise is with Lento to sign her acknowledgement of quest completion. That's when she lets Lento know her decision. He has inspired her, and now she wants to become an adventurer. Wait, what? Elise tells Lento about how she always wanted to become an adventurer for Lillian's sake. She was already planning to go to the swamp if no one accepted her quest. Lento accepting the request would imply there's no need anymore, but Elise insists, saying the brave and noble Lento inspired her decision. He can't ask her not to become an adventurer, so he advises her rather. He tells her to start training before the age of being accepted into the guild, and suggests being an apprentice under his witch friend. Of course, he's referring to Lorraine. Excitedly, she accepts the advice. They go down to the basement and Lento makes an astonishing discovery. Edel has made mice familiar to himself and therefore familiar to Lento. Just how influential is this unexpected ability? Edel informs Lento that his influence with the mice has spread throughout the territory of Malt. Wow. Back at home with Lorraine, Lento keeps her updated on his activities, including referring her to the young Elise. Lorraine accepts Elise's arrival and does so with her usual sarcastic remarks. Lento thinks all is well until Lorraine starts talking about him and his life with ladies. Huh? She complains that he doesn't even acknowledge her as a lady. Lento starts to blurt out compliments to satisfy her, and then he notices something. Lorraine is drunk. She staggers to her room and the awkward night comes to an end. A few days later, Lento is at the Guild Associate dismantling facility to exchange his loot for a reward. Dario Costa, the department administrator, attends to him. The reward Dario gives him is much more than he expects. It is a reward that ensures he has no monetary need for a while. He learns from Dario Costa that he didn't conveniently kill the Tarask. The conventional method of killing makes sure the monster is almost completely damaged, but the body parts saved by Lento are worth quite a bit. Lento heads out, hardly believing his good fortune. On the way, he's intercepted by a frightened Sheila. She informs him that a new personal request just came in. He remembers Isaac Holt asking to give him a personal quest. What he doesn't know yet is that the request is from the Latour family, a powerful family that the entire Malt City is very careful with. Just how dangerous is this new family that Lento has gotten involved with? And what sort of quests do they have in store for him? Few adventurers are aware of them, and refusing a personal request from them could have deadly consequences. Secretive, huh? With the maze in front of him, he starts to believe what he was told. Lento takes out his Acacia's map, hoping it would help him with the way through, but it's no good. He goes in circles for hours and ends up at that gate again, right where he started. The guard at the gate, who has been observing the adventurer, advises him to take a quick rest before resuming his quest. He tries to get tips from the guard, but with little luck. However, he learns that the maze path changes frequently with the help of a magic tool, and that people who manage to complete the maze are rewarded with the magic tool as well. Not a bad deal, but it's still rather stressful. As he sets back out, the guard gives him confusing advice, telling him not to rely on the sun. What is that supposed to mean? A little while later, Lento sets out again. He thinks about the magic tool and concludes it's probably one of the labyrinth tools Lorraine mentioned some time ago. There are two broad categorizations of magic tools, labyrinth items and others. Labyrinth items are those found in the dungeon, while others are created to imitate labyrinth items. Labyrinth items are more rare, more complex, hard to imitate, and full of special effects. Still in his thoughts, Lento wonders whether the head of the Latour family is a great magic user, employs magic users, or owns a large number of mana stones. Whichever it is, this is quite impressive. He's drawn back to reality by a small gate with numerous roses. Could that be what he's looking for? He hurriedly opens the garden door. It's empty except for a young girl having a tea party all by herself. "Are you ready to give up?" she asks. Lento, however tired, refuses to give up and chooses to carry on. She smiles and invites him to her little tea party before he sets out again. He accepts her invitation. As Lento Feiner sits down, he's unaware of how crucial this could be to his next step of existential evolution. As Lento Feiner sits with the young girl to have some tea, he has a familiar sensation, similar to what he felt when he met Isaac at the swamp of Tarask. Surely it would mean she's a member of the Latour family, wouldn't it? Have you noticed? She snaps him out of his thoughts. Huh? Could she figure out what he was thinking? Is that part of the Latour family's abilities? She cools his presumptuous mind by telling him that the tea set is also a magic tool. Wars have been fought over this kind of tea set, according to her. He flows with the conversation, and as they converse, he discovers that she is very passionate about collecting magic tools. She raises a question about Lento's mask, asking whether he intends to drink with it. He informs her that it's cursed, and although he can drink with it, he can't get it off. That is all that prevented her from poaching the mask, as she has already asked for its price. Awkward moment, that one. Lento smartly changes the subject by asking for the tea set's price. She tells him it was bought for 300 platinum coins. 1 platinum coin would probably make Lento set for life. These rich people sure know how to throw money around, don't they? A little while later, Lento finishes with his tea and is about to set out. They agree to exchange names once he manages to finish the maze. She also drops a hint for him. It would be best not to look at the sun. The guard also said that. What does that even mean? Back in the maze, he starts to ponder. The guard probably advised him from his experience. As an undead, his senses are much sharper than when he was human. Could this be an illusion? He fails to move out of the way quickly and kicks something. It's a little rock. No bother. Wait a minute. The rock disappears. He recognizes what just happened because it also happened at the dungeon. It's spatial teleportation. The only difference is the absence of a magic circle, but it essentially makes the space where you come from similar to where you teleport to. So that's the magic? But that would mean the sun is the only way you can track your movements. That's her. What a tricky family. Slowly but steadily, he begins to find his way through, mapping his movements with rose petals from the maze. A little while later, Lento Feiner finds himself right in front of the Latour mansion. What a way to mess with an adventurer. Lento stands at the entrance of the mansion and 2 familiar faces come out to meet him. It's the girl from the garden and Isaac from the swamp is with her. The young girl has a smirk on her face while congratulating Lento. She asks that they get better acquainted and introduces herself as Laura Latour, the head of the Latour family. She also introduces Isaac Harso as her servant. Lento introduces himself with the name he gave to the guild, Rent Vivier. They talk about the difficulty of the maze. Lento imagines that it would have been much more difficult to figure it out with his old body. Old body? Lento realizes he was speaking out loud, and he's not about to tell them his secret of being undead, so he changes the topic. The 3 of them head down a rather long spiral flight of stairs, typical of rich people in a mansion. Laura informs him that they are headed to the treasury, so he can get a reward for passing the maze. Magic tools, cool. Maybe there would be something attractive for an adventurer like him. After walking down for what seems like forever, they finally get to the treasury, where everything is magical, even the lights. The magic tools are as numerous as they are organized. Usage, types, artifacts, and labyrinth products. Impressive. Laura doesn't hide her hunger for collecting magic tools. Even if they're junk, as long as they're magic tools, she wants them. Laura tells Lento that his quest is to regularly collect the dragon's blood flower for her, so she does have the evil accumulation disease. That's sad, especially with how young she looks. He accepts the request. It would mean more rewards for him after all. Lento, while checking out the magic tools, is still lost in thoughts as to how a young girl like Laura would get the disease. She doesn't look older than 14. Oh. He nearly drops a magic tool but manages to catch it at the last second. He's relieved knowing how much it might have cost. Thank goodness I managed to catch it. He looks at Laura's face and she is petrified. Rent, get out of there! She goes out to look for the halting device to stop what Lento has activated. The whole treasury is descending into chaos. Lento still doesn't fully understand what he has done. As the dust clears a bit, Lento looks up and is shocked by what he sees. A golem. A golem is an automatic moving doll made of alchemy derived from magic. It's a very powerful creature made from advanced materials. Quickly, the golem sends Lento flying backwards with the magic cannon. This creature isn't here to joke. From behind the rocks, Isaac tells Lento that this particular golem is made from extremely rare materials and is only one made by the labyrinth. Just how unlucky could an undead man be? Usually, golems collapse after the magic power is used up, but this one absorbs magic tools from its surroundings and grows bigger. It is also capable of using the tools it absorbs. The golem casts a spell that hinders collective actions, meaning that Lento and Isaac wouldn't be able to attack at once. As if things couldn't get any worse, Isaac goes out to look for the halting device with Laura. He asks Lento to hang on for 3 minutes. Easier said than done, as Lento barely holds his own in the fight. As the golem is in a magic treasury, there is no shortage of weapons on its side, and it powers up after every attack too. Lento thinks back to what Lorraine once said. Golems have a magic word with the meaning truth carved on their foreheads. Add 1 letter and it would turn into a word meaning death. Since he's out of options, he decides to try it. He dodges the attacks until he gets to the head of the golem. There's nothing like that on its head. Rather than seeing his attack work, he sees what appears to be another golem. He's about to give up when Laura comes in and uses the halting device, saved by the bell. She apologizes to Lento for the near-death experience. Luckily, he has no serious injuries and can move on. The golem leaves a lot to be repaired as it collapses. Luckily, there are magical repairing tools in the treasury, so that isn't much of a problem. Lento still can't believe he hasn't encountered this creature in the labyrinth. He makes a mental note to himself to explore the labyrinth where the creature is from. If he can't face creatures like these, how else does he plan to achieve his dream of being a mithril class adventurer? Speaking of getting stronger, he remembers the last monster he defeated and how he should have evolved, if not for something that he's missing, whatever that is. Laura asks whether he is ready to keep looking at the magic tools. He is ready, but much more cautiously this time, as he can't risk contact with golems for now. They explore the treasury and show him lots of tools: barrier tools, floating tools, detonation tubes, magic armor, a voice changer, and even one that renders poison ineffective. It's a tough decision, but Lento finally settles on his preferred reward. Later that day, Lento is back with Lorraine and narrates the whole event to her. After listening to his explanation, she is even more confused as to why he selected a toy airship as his reward. An airship of all the things you could pick? Lento is obsessed with this new airship. It's every boy's dream, he says. Lorraine still cannot understand his decision until he brings out something else: vampire blood in a bottle. Now that's more like it. Vampire blood is a powerful drug. It can be a medicine for immortality, but many people die from it. Lento and Lorraine contemplate whether to take the blood, as it could either help him evolve or cause dire consequences. In the end, he decides to take it, especially as it would bring him a step closer to being a mithril class adventurer. He drinks the blood and seems fine for a while, but then he begins to feel a tingling sensation, and suddenly his body opens and something sprouts out of it. Lorraine is confused as she watches Lento's body in part horror and part curiosity. Could this be the next step of existential evolution? It's like flesh is wrapped around Lento's body, forming what now looks like a cocoon. Meanwhile, Lento is inside this cocoon, his mind more active than his body. He feels his body slipping away, every nerve cell slowly going. Lorraine once talked about caterpillars inside their cocoons like a gloopy soup. Is that what is happening? Memories appear and disappear in his new world until he can hardly remember anything any longer. But he hangs on, fighting with all his mind. He remembers his name, his purpose, and his friends. With that memory, he slowly begins to come back together. He sees his heart, bones, and body organs being put together. Then he sees what he thirsts for: blood. He's now completely unwrapped and standing in front of Lorraine as a vampire. He can only stand for a while before passing out. Lento wakes up sometime later, and Lorraine gets him up to speed on her research. She has been trying to determine what kind of vampire he evolved into, but without much success, especially since no one turned him into a vampire. Since they can't determine what kind he is, Lorraine decides to run tests on him, starting from his wings. Flight test, cool. It's not until she asks how he moves his wings that he realizes they are moving unconsciously. He can float with his wings by channeling magic into them, and can propel them by using ki energy. Spirit just makes it glow. He also discovers his injuries heal quickly when in the light. Some vampire. During the flight test, he falls into a forest and discovers something astonishing. He can make plants grow by using his spirit power. So he can fly, drink blood, give life, and control magic beings? Sounds like he's getting further away from being human. On the flip side, his speech and voice as a vampire is much better now. To the outsider at least, he looks much more human. Welcome back, Lento Feiner. Lento is back at the orphanage to see Elise, this time with Lorraine. Elise is surprised to see him but welcomes him. Lento leaves her with Lorraine while he goes to check up on Lillian. Lento is in the room with the grateful, recuperating Lillian, who confesses not to have known about her ailment, nor did she know about Lento's actual request. She calls for Elise, who comes in with Lorraine to make her intentions known about her being an adventurer. Lorraine specifically asks Lillian that Elise should be allowed to be her apprentice. While Lento left them outside, she measured Elise's magic potential and was more than surprised. Elise possesses the potential enough to be a court sorcerer. Court sorcerer is the highest occupation in the Yadan Kingdom. Depending on the department, they are of the same prestige as Kingdom Knights. Lento is as shocked as Lillian, who finds it difficult to process. She asks for some alone time with Elise, and everyone else leaves the room. She has a heart-to-heart talk with Elise, who is more like a daughter to her, and finally allows her to join Lento's company and fulfill her dream of becoming an adventurer. Meanwhile, back at Malt City, a chariot enters the city with two strangers on it. They discuss healing and purification in the city, as well as preaching and evangelization. The young lady talks about fulfilling her role as the Holy Maiden. Good news or bad news? We can't tell for now. There is a religious group called the Lobelia Faith. Their core foundation is based on the creation of the world by a soul goddess, Lobelia. Due to their global work, this religion has an enormous amount of followers. It especially has great influence in the western country of the Holy Ars Kingdom. In the eastern borderlands, the Huron Kingdom has over half its population believing in the Eastern Heavenly Faith. The Holy Maiden Muriel and her companion stand in front of the church in Malta. Muriel is less than impressed by what she sees. The size, structure, and number of practicing people are less than impressive numbers. Even the people in the church are there only to buy high-grade holy water. Her companion tells her that this is the reason she's been sent here. Missionary work, yes. Baby steps. They first decide to introduce themselves to important people in town. A little child approaches them with her sick cat. That's a good way to start. She heals the animal and teaches the children what she can. Maybe she could get used to this. Muriel is snapped from her thoughts by her companion, who has a letter in his hands. It's an imperial order from the Holy Father, which instructs her to take up another mission and accompany a total stranger. That's a weird instruction, but it's what missionaries do. Back to Lento, our adventurer is back at the guild special dissection site after Dario requested to meet with him. Dario gets him up to speed about the Tarask. He decided to auction it so it could go for a little above the regular price. Well, it sounds like good news. More than good news, it's too good to be true, as it was auctioned 2 times its price. The one problem is that the buyers have asked to meet the seller in person, as they're surprised by how cleanly he got the job done. Lento weighs his options for some time and he decides to meet the buyers. What's the worst that could happen? Dario tells him that the auctioneer is the Steno company. Yes, that is the worst that could happen. Sheila, who came there with Lento, tells him about the Steno company. They have a well-known store in Malt. They don't just do auctions, but also foreign trade and urban development. It's a large company. Lento feels a bit uneasy, but decides to carry on. After all, with his new evolution, he has nothing to fear. Well, nothing except for vampire hunters. As per request, Lento goes to the Steno company to meet his customers. He introduces himself to an employee who immediately shows him to the drawing room where he would meet his customers. He is only made to wait a little while before Mr. Charles Steno, the president of the company, comes in. After a brief introduction, Mr. Steno confesses that the pay for the Tarask is even higher than he told Dario. Lento's ears are twitchy at the sound of that, but they are quickly interrupted by news that visitors are here to see Mr. Steno. He allows them in. The visitor who comes in is no other than Murielessa, the Holy Maiden. Lento doesn't know her but recognizes she's a saint. During the introduction with Lento, her staff begins to resonate with his sacred spirit and shine. But before they can talk about what just happened, another visitor steps in. It's Eve Morris, a golden adventurer and vampire hunter. Oh, mother of all unfortunate circumstances! Eve Morris is a hunter who rose to gold class simply by hunting vampires. It turns out that Eve requested to see the Tarask hunter. She needed Tarask materials but is particularly weak against poisons, which is why she needs the Holy Maiden as a companion to purify her. Muriel lets it slip that Lento is a spirit user. Eve also has a special sacred spirit ability called the Holy Flames. She demonstrates it by using Mr. Steno. The flame enters him but nothing happens. With a smirk on her face, she reveals that the flame is specially designed to catch and eradicate vampires. The smirk remains on her face when she asks to test Lento next. He smartly declines, saying that evil spirits would be exorcised and he needs them to hunt the Tarask. That's got to be a good excuse that doesn't raise suspicion. At least he thinks so. Lento turns his back and doesn't see Eve coming from behind with the Holy Flame. There's no way to avoid it now. Will his identity finally be leaked? Unable to see Eve's presence due to the Holy Flame, she's about to slash him up as she is driven by instinct when the sister and auctioneer present, Shar, stops her saying he's not a vampire. This is because the Holy Flame did not identify Lento as a vampire. The effects of the Holy Flame on Lento, even though he's a vampire, were mild as he did not feel any pain but the warmth of the flame. This is a result of existential evolution since Lento was originally a human. Eve apologizes for the sudden attack on Lento, which brings him to question what gave that impression. When asked how she knew he was a vampire, she replied with it was just a hunch. I guess most adventurers go by hunches. She proceeds to give valid reasons. First, the difficulty of obtaining a dragon blood flower. A swamp is a place that has captured many souls, injured a few, and is highly rated in terms of danger. Given the fact that he was able to reach the place and then get the flowers, which have been proven to be difficult, not to mention the types of vicious beasts that lurk around. Secondly, his personal background. Rent, as he goes by now, is a bronze class adventurer, even though he just recently registered as a guild member, which seemed inhuman to do. Therefore, her suspicion of him being a vampire as she had done her research on Lento. She then continues the conversation by asking if he has heard anything about the missing adventurers, to which he replied negatively. Eve began discussing the similarities between happenings in the surrounding cities and how they would happen in their city, Naruto, which signs to prove her logic. She thrives off killing vampires and is excitedly discussing about them as Eve predicts that a lot of chaos and a terrible festival is coming to Naruto, and she, including the others, have to get ready for it, even if there's no case of disappearance. She pulls up her map and shows her confident plans crafted from her observations to kill vampires. The major goal that Eve drives towards is the goal of vampire subjugation, reducing the population of vampires and their goals to little number till they are endangered by humans and can prey no further. Eve Morris plans to kill vampires naturally just as she enjoys the process. Renta asks if she's aware that not all vampires are bent on killing humans, just for the sake of being a higher or stronger species. There are different types of vampires, those that blend into the crowd, pretending to be human, and those that feed on humans as usual or even turn them into ghouls. Then there's the special one, the Twilight Vampire. This kind of vampire is just rumored to be a myth or legend, but Eve is determined to keep hunting vampires till she encounters one and defeats it, even though those around her thinks it's unrealistic and foolish. Rent agrees with her, saying he also hopes to reach the rank of mithril class adventurer someday. Seeing this, she realizes that maybe he isn't a vampire, but he is someone she would need, and with this thought, she hands him her contact information, informing him to call her if he ever comes across a vampire too strong to handle. She further adds that her intuition says that he would call her someday. Rent jests in his head about her intuition being 99% correct instead of 100%, as he ain't calling no one. Soon enough, introductions were made, Eve being the buyer and Lento the seller, and the auction began. Naturally, the range for the starting bid in most places is from 100 gold coins, and the highest in natural circumstances is 300. Eve decides to ask if it were too extreme, it would be 400. She also did promise to double the starting bid, which makes the price of the dragon flower 800 gold coins. She then asks how much they were to consider the dangers and harm that befell those who obtain or tried to obtain it. Shar answers that even if the individual dies, the compensation would be nothing above 50 to 100 gold coins. This added to the price, reaching 900. Eve soon decides to round it up to 1,000 gold coins. Rent hasn't set his eyes on this amount of coins his entire adventuring journey, or even his life in fact. In a bid to win Rent's favor, she decides to double the standing point to 2,000 gold coins and concluded the bargain there. Rent is aware that dragon blood flowers are sought after and expensively paid for, but this was just too much even though Eve brushed it off, saying it cost way cheaper than she thought. Back at Lorraine's place, they discuss what had happened at the auction house. Rent also decides to not take any more quests for the time being and remain in the shadows as the guild is concentrating more on finding the missing adventurers. Since he has decided to not take any new quests, Lorraine brings up the idea of visiting his hometown. At the 3rd level of the New Moon Labyrinth, Rent explores looking for shrub trees and soon encounters living shrub spirit trees. After much struggle, fighting, and trying not to get caught in the twines of the tree, he successfully acquires a branch of the shrub spirit tree. He then recalls Lorraine's discussion where she explained why she would like him to visit his hometown, Hullhather. She explains how spirit power works, using Eve and Shar as examples. The Holy Flame is a skill that can only be used by people who give spirit power and are blessed by the spirit or gods. That is, the different ones that control the different powers. Spirit power varies just as the gods or spirits involved, and to acquire or enhance such power, Rent would have to go to his roots, the roots he had before he ever became a ghoul, his human roots. So going back to his hometown is the only way he can enhance or work on his spirit power. The people and the extent to which they can fully exercise this power depends on their amount of magical power and their ki, also known as divinity. Rent grasps how this works as he has a similar connection to his rat, Edel, who is bound and connected to him by blood. Lorraine agrees, explaining that the relationship works on the premise of mutual assistance, termed the Way. If you know the origin of the target, the Way automatically becomes stronger and naturally better. She also wanted him to get materials from the Crescent Moon Labyrinth that she would use to make a wand for her disciple, Elise. Rent gets to the Crescent Moon Labyrinth and using the Acacia map. He got in and expected to collect the items on this list in a few days, say 10. He first finds the shrub and log of wood for the wand Elise would be owning. Next, he gets to collect the items from the labyrinth on the list. These items that Lorraine wrote down were mostly in the 3rd to 4th levels of the labyrinth, and from monsters in those levels which are highly dangerous creatures. In the Crescent Moon Labyrinth, a strange presence appears in front of him asking, "Who are you?" Which is a very weird happening as the strange girl kept repeating it. Rent looks back after the girl walks toward him and puts her hands right through him. He sees a clothed, to be more specific, a hooded figure she beckons to. This figure turns out to be his form when he was just newly, how would I put it? Barbecued by the dragon, his old skeleton body. Suddenly, both figures fade away. Shook by this, he continues his exploring to the 2nd level. Below the 3rd level, there is a mountainous area with very unstable terrain due to excess spiritual pressure and energy. At the center of this area, there's a large ravine with a single bridge as the only way to enter it. The interior of this area contains a maze with unstable areas and landmarks. This bridge is clustered up with high intelligence monsters who lay in wait for adventurers to kill them while they try to cross it. With no other safe way in, Rent uses his wings to cross and enter the ravine. Most of the time, the labyrinth and its levels collapse due to the extreme pressure and energy from monsters in it. Therefore, it makes map usage by adventurers difficult, as most maps don't have new variations till they are updated. This usually costs adventurers their lives, and sometimes they get lost till they're found by the guild. The items on this list include various rare materials like shrub and splinter, demon ape stone, forest wolf fur, orc soldiers, and lizard men. This could prove arduous for Rent, but luckily he has Edel with him. Thanks to his environmental adaptation in Rent's blood, he can change to suit different environments, possessing essential skills. There are various types of rats: fire rats, earth rats, water rats, and wind rats. These are all due to variations in their external and internal spirit pressure. Thanks to Rent's attributes, Edel is learning magic and uses magic as well, a greater ability encompassing the others. A mind goblin attacks them while they explore the mines of the labyrinth, but Edel has a little problem facing a creature as tough and strong as it is. Edel faces off with it, Rent has an audience, and kills the goblin, bagging the wind itself. The pair continues their exploring the mine as they tease on reversing the conditions of their master-pet relationship. As they explore, the terrain begins to move slowly. A light tremor occurs and soon enough, definitely what any of them expected, a dangerous creature. The Terror Drake makes its presence known. After struggling to fight it off as this creature in its defensive body doesn't give much room for damage, the huge mineral monster scurries off into hiding. The Terror Drake is a rare and huge beast belonging to a lower tribe of dragons. Not entirely a dragon, but owning similar characteristics and strength, this creature's body is made of purely iron ore. It's usually referred to as a mineral monster given its physical appearance as a major factor of description. After successfully fending this beast off, it dropped the ore on its head, which Rent collects as it would come in handy for making equipment or armor in the nearest future. The appearance of this beast alone proves or indicates that iron ore is nearby. This ore could be used to make weapons, but most light armor for female adventurers and guarded clothes for children. The exploring continues and more tremors, heavier ones, occur. Naturally, tremors are bound to occur in areas due to the capacity and amount of energy and spiritual pressure monsters from major to minor tribes like dragons to lizardmen possess, enough pressure to even stop the movements of weaker creatures. Suddenly, Edel senses a huge tremor approaching. This one was different than any other one that has occurred. This is due to the presence of an earth dragon in that area, the most destructive of its kind. It is said that earth dragons have the capacity to destroy cities and nations in minutes by earthquakes and due to their massive size. Rent, in front of the monstrosity, quickly realizes that he cannot dream of facing it in his current state. He hopes to become a mithril ranked adventurer so he can return to face entities like this. The spiritual pressures of the dragon was similar to the ones that turned him into a skeleton. He cannot make any movements, and even when he tries to escape with his wings, they wouldn't budge. He gave it his all trying to escape from this sure death, but his wings just won't work. Soon enough, when sighted by the earth dragon, he gets swallowed up. In the stomach of the earth dragon, he realizes he still has consciousness. He can breathe, but still can't move. This is because the energy inside the earth dragon, and even in its gastric juice, is so dense and high that it negates motion entirely. He sees other things the dragon has consumed, including the skeleton of the terror drake he had seen earlier. The body begins to slowly disappear as his consciousness starts to dwindle. Next, he notices his own body begin to disappear, just like the weird girl appearance he met earlier. It took a while, but Rent marries the two events together to understand what is happening. The pressure and energy of everything makes every organism, memory, and even time and space to be transposed as information, rendering things, even emotions like anger and fear, bits of information. This is also happening as a result of the amount and huge collection of energy in the dragon. Losing consciousness, he appears in his past young form and soon meets another girl, this time someone he supposedly knows. She informs him she'll be waiting for him in the future and that he should send her regards to Lorraine and her people. Soon enough, after she says it's time to go, he gets spat out by the dragon. Meanwhile, at the Latour mansion, Laura asks Isaac to fetch the documents Rent requested as he would soon return to get them, and so it would be prepared in advance for his arrival. It was about time. When Rent returns home to Lorraine's place, he tells how the exploring went, how truly evil the list was, and his luck in meeting a terror drake and then getting swallowed by an earth dragon shortly after. He also told her of the two strange girls he ran into, and the fact that he had to face an orc soldier on the second floor when they're supposed to be on the fourth. This alarms Lorraine because judging from this occurrence, a flood can occur. Floods are synonyms for dungeon breaks, where monsters of different sizes and strengths, varying in evolutions and adaptation, escape or leave their caves or holes or dungeons in the labyrinth. Events like these are bound to cause disasters and loss of lives, as well as destruction on a grand scale. Later, the trio, Rent, Lorraine, and Elise, go to Luca's shop, and there they are warmly welcomed and received. Rent follows Clove, and they talk about the ore he acquired from the terror drake. The man just stood there in shock and marveled at what a story it was. After looking at the ore for a while, Clove realizes it isn't just an ordinary ore, and judging from where Rent acquired it and its physical color, purple, it is most likely a naturally enchanted iron ore. Rent asks if it was like orichalcum that he had wanted and mentioned earlier. Clove explains that it does share a resemblance with it in physical toughness, but its composition is entirely different. This particular piece is very rare, and if Rent intends to make use of it in making weapons or armor, it would be very difficult to acquire materials for the recipe. This discussion went on while Elise was getting her measurements for armor taken, as Lorraine desires her disciple to be well defended and protected. The recipe Clove knows requires a couple of rare materials: platinum or high-class magic stone, sacred tree leaves, and vampire blood for manufacturing to commence. Clove advises Rent to sell it rather than hold on to it in the hopes of making something from or with it, as acquiring all those materials would either be highly expensive or difficult. Rent decides with so much zeal to hold on to it in the bid to make something rare out of it. His determination convinced Clove that he plans to gather and collect these items, making him cherish being a blacksmith. He quickly remembers that he has something to show Rent: the logs of wood Rent had made cuts with spirit on. They began to sprout just like the sacred tree leaves he had mentioned earlier. Clove processes to ask if it were possible that they grow and produce sacred leaves, which were rare as they only grew in the land of a sacred tree, guarded by spirits and elves, shut off from the rest of the world. Lorraine, out of the blue, answered the question, saying it was not possible as Rent's lifespan would not give adequate room for that. She had read experiments made with and on trees like that, trying to create these sacred leaves, and it would take 1,000 years, and on probability, for one or two of the trees to produce leaves with spirit and energy running through them, though Lorraine wanted one of the logs to carry out experiments with. After Elise gets her measurements taken, they prepare to leave, even though Elise would still have to return to get the measurements tailored down to her size as it is being crafted. The trio split ways, with Lorraine taking Elise home to continue working on her wand, and Rent has to go to the guild office to report his findings. At the guild office, he meets with the Grandmaster and finally comes clean on the double registration. The Grandmaster, though angry, understands his reason and responds to his situation. He proceeds to tell the Grandmaster the findings he had made, the Earth Dragon, and the chance of a flood. Before this, while in the city before he visits the Latour, he's doing a little shopping when he meets Lena at a stall. She instantly recognizes him and with joy exchanged pleasantries with him. He also apologizes for making her worry. Getting used to the new versions of themselves, they catch up on times lost as Ren tells her how much his evolution journey has come, from the ghoul she saw or new to the low vampire he is now. All the cycles, events, and adventures he had to go through. He also appreciates her and Lorraine as if it weren't for both of them, he had resolved to live in the shadows, away from society. But look at him now, walking among the crowd of the city freely with no fear. She talks about how thinking she hasn't grown much from when he last saw her, but when asked about how her adventuring journey is, she responds with so much glee explaining that so far it has been a good one. She joined a team with Raizu and Lola, who turns out to be Rise and Laura, Ren's partners for the exam. They had told her about him but used the wrong name, though she figured it was him from his reaction to their names. Speaking of wrong names, he informs her that he met her brother but denied knowing her since she changed the name. She explains her situation to him and together they find out her brother left a letter for her at the address he gave Ren. The letter from her brother eggs her on to become a full-fledged adventurer before they meet. They then part ways and Ren visits the Latour, where he collects documents from their archive and informs them of his inability to deliver dragon blood flowers. Meanwhile, there's a mage adventurer about to face a stampede of ghouls on a village restoration mission she accepted. Lento Fener, together with his companion Lorraine, is now set on his way to his hometown in Hatohara. A journey to his hometown costs 5 silver coins, or at least the captain says so. 5 silver coins with very little food provisions would trouble anyone, but Lento and Lorraine have other concerns. They're making the journey on a tortoise. In the eastern frontier, long-distance travel is broadly divided into 3 means: splendid horse, carriage, and giant tortoise. The splendid horse is largely used by the rich, the carriage is mostly for commoners and cannot navigate the mountain roads, while the giant tortoise, however uncommon, is sturdy and suited for very long-distance travel. A little while later, the tortoise carriage is loaded with travelers and they are ready to depart. The tortoise rides much quicker than Lorraine expects, or than anyone would. She seems to be enjoying the journey. Lento, not so much. He feels the nostalgia that comes with traveling a route one too many times. He recalls the rough roads, rattling wheels, and too many people. But none of that particularly makes him dislike the journey. What he feels nostalgic about most of all is having a partner the last time he made the trip. He's spaced out and it takes the yelling of Lorraine to bring his mind back to base. When asked what he's thinking about, he insists that it's nothing. A weird moment, I'd say. The travelers get to their first campsite of the journey. It's an open space that once had a village close to it. Even though creatures are still roaming around, the captain insists that it's a safe space and there's nothing to fear. Well, there's a vampire and silver-ranked magic user in their midst, so they really have nothing to fear, they just don't know it yet. For the night's meal, the captain offers the travelers dried meat. After a long day's journey, Lento and Lorraine pass up the option. Instead, they make their own food, which seems to attract other travelers. The more the merrier, I guess. They share the food with the travelers while making sure to save some for later. It's a long journey and tomorrow is another day. The moon is full and the travelers are asleep. Lento is on the lookout while others sleep, as he has been for a while now. Lorraine wakes up and asks to relieve him of his duties. He asks her not to bother since he didn't need any sleep as a vampire. Well, he still needs to get some rest to avoid suspicion if nothing else. Maybe there's something else. Lorraine goes ahead and asks if he's staying awake to avoid dreaming about her. He doesn't deny it, as he hasn't gotten over what happened over a decade ago, especially with the nostalgic feeling. It's not Lorraine, there's someone else, or at least there was. Before Lorraine can give her wise words, a group of zombies up ahead ends their conversation abruptly. Zombies, huh? They decide to deal with the obstruction without waking anyone up. Both of them go in this time. Lorraine distracts the zombies with her magic while Lento swoops in with his vampire wings. The zombies are no match for them. Lorraine, with the help of her magic, combines wind and fire, using the combination to burn the zombies to ashes. The job is done and Lorraine leaves the purification to the spirit user, Lento. Whenever impure beings like zombies are defeated, a lot of miasma is left in the area. If left untreated, it could cause people to get sick and prevent vegetation for a long time. Sometimes the land could get cursed. The swamp of Tarask is a great example of this, so it's considered appropriate for adventurers to purify the land after the quest. Lento Fener purifies the area. The job is done and they can return to the tortoise. The young adventurers don't notice a woman lurking in the shadows, watching them. She comes out to talk to them. I'm impressed. I didn't know there were adventurers who could purify properly these days. Huh? Before Lento or Lorraine can go offensive, the strange woman introduces herself as a fellow adventurer, saying she must have missed a few zombies that attacked them. She looks to be what she says, as she is a gold-ranked adventurer and an elf. Seeing as she identifies as an adventurer, Lento and Lorraine let their guard down, but not too much. He introduces himself as Rent Vivier, a swordsman. Lorraine sticks to her name and introduces herself as a sorceress and scholar. The elf is a saintess named Ahilde. She asks to be called Hilda. Lento and Lorraine are much more respectful, seeing as Hilda is a long-lived species, an elf. Seeing the formalities, she asks them to be free. During their conversation, she reveals that she usually operates in the capital, but received a recent request to restore the nearby village. The village of Taraka used to be filled with people, but was destroyed decades ago by monsters. The old corpses must be what has now come back as zombies. Zombies are naturally extremely effective in taking nutrition. If they can't sustain themselves above ground, they usually go underground in what is called dormancy dive. These zombies can be active again under certain circumstances. Hilda doesn't hide anything. She tells them about her suspicion of someone deliberately waking these zombies up. According to her, it could be a necromancer with evil intentions, or perhaps a vampire looking for their kin. A vampire, again? Hilda's mission to rebuild the village includes stopping whatever is responsible for waking the zombies. With her story told in detail, she asks for theirs. They inform her about their travel to Hatohara. She seems to know the place very well, and even more than that, she accurately guesses that Lento's travel purpose is to find the roots of his sacred spirit. They're astonished at how precise and accurate she is. She explains how she made her guess, the purification marks Lento made, and the residue. With the purification marks, she observed a few trees sprouting in the area, like the sacred blessing of the forest spirits. About the residue, she points out that she cannot see any and can tell that he isn't hiding his residue, so he must be a self-taught spirit user searching for his roots. Residue is like a sacred presence orbiting around a spirit user. Unlike magic power, the spirit tends to linger around its source. This residue can be seen by other spirit users and can either be hidden or brought out. At the end of her speech, Hilda gives a practical demonstration by bringing out her spirit. Lento and Lorraine are blown away because the energy is massive. Then she drops the question, "It must be fate that we met. Would you like to learn from me?" Well, that's one way to make a detour from a trip. Lento keeps a silent face, the look that usually comes when he's faced with a choice. Hilda is still asking Lento to learn from her. She even suggests that he could learn only to conceal his residue and promises they'd be done by morning. Lento can finally speak. He wonders why she's particular about teaching him. Yes, Hilda, why so particular? Hilda tells him about how special his gift is, pointing to the little sprouting trees as a source of holy energy. Lento is lost and Lorraine even more. Hilda reveals that her second reason is to help Lento see. See? He has eyes, doesn't he? Before she explains, she politely asks Lorraine to excuse them and let the spirit users have an exclusive class. Lorraine is not completely comfortable with Hilda, but she eventually leaves. Now alone with Lento, Hilda explains the technique of hiding residue. Spirit energy is a blessing separate from the body's inherent strength and tends to stay, unlike magic. The body becomes like a vessel to store or hide residue. Just like droplets of water on a cold glass during condensation, spirit is like the water droplets which condense. The technique is to balance the internal and external pressure of spirit energy. The class then begins. She asks Lento to release all the spirit energy and saturate himself with spirit. Lento manages to do it. Next, he has to fit all the released energy back inside his body and compress it. Compression makes the energy unstable, so he has to create a barrier to keep the spirit in, and then balance it through breathing exercises. The goal is to leave no residue behind. Lento finds this challenge a bit difficult, but little by little, he manages to do it. He learns how to conceal his residual spirit energy. Just another day for the adventurer. Lento and Hilda spend the entire night practicing this new skill till he gets it right. Just when he thinks he can finally rest, she tells him he has to constantly maintain it, as if doing it wasn't already difficult enough. Next up, seeing residue. To see residue, one must divide their spirit at a neural level, and then concentrate it into their field of vision. The process of seeing residue is too difficult for a beginner like Lento, so she decides to take another method instead. She approaches and looks directly into his eyes, asking him not to look away. Sure. He looks into her eyes for a while, not seeing the point of the exercise, till her eyes begin to look spiral. Hilda's spirit begins to enter Lento's eyes. If the energy of a particularly skilled individual is applied directly to the body, you can awaken their senses by transmitting an image. After a while of deeply staring into each other's eyes, she lets Lento open his eyes. What he sees is more beautiful than he could have imagined. There's spirit energy everywhere, all around him. Hilda cuts his sightseeing short though, telling him that he only sees her with her sense of vision due to her spirit energy, and that he would go back to normal soon enough. Way to ruin the party. Hilda continues to lecture him. She tells him that so many things in the world could be described with spirit. The will of the spirits, gods and summoned beings, motions of waves, and even the souls of people. She tells him that a soul should be a mere existence or idea, but it looks like it never left his side. Could that be the reason for his unending dreams? Does he need to pay a visit to the graves in Hatohara? Lorraine wakes up and looks out. It's morning already. She quickly goes to check on Lento and his new mentor. She finds only Lento there, and he confirms that Hilda is gone, but she was at least courteous enough to send a goodbye to Lorraine. She asks whether he successfully learned to conceal his residue. Just like at night, he's learned to do it but is struggling to maintain it. Oh well, practice makes perfect. During the conversation, he asked her to go to the capital if she wanted to learn about spirit. She had a tight schedule but decides to give it a thought. It's a beautiful morning, and the travelers are in the rough mountains. They travel undisturbed until a little girl starts to cry that her little bear is destroyed. Her mother promises to get a new one in the next town, but she cries even more. Lorraine has to step in and offer to help fix her toy. Lorraine gives the little girl another doll while she fixes hers. Lento then notices something about the doll. He made that doll from the wood gotten from the shrubs. Why did Lorraine have to bring the doll? He asks her, but she insists the doll just happened to be in her bag. For an object that just happened to be in her bag, Lorraine is strangely attached to the doll, refusing to permanently give it away. Weird. She fixes the little bear for the little child and gets her doll back. Fair enough. Days pass as Lento and Lorraine travel. They make and say goodbye to different acquaintances who get to their destination before them. Hatohara is almost at the end of the station line, which is probably one of the reasons it costs 5 silver coins. The days go by and it's almost like they won't get to Lento's hometown. And so they do. Hatohara, here we are. The captain drops them off at some distance from the village, so they have to walk the rest of the way. Walking also takes a while, but they're already in Hatohara and the journey is all but over. They finally reach the village and meet 2 guards at the village gate. The guards point their weapons at the strange man in the mask and the woman. They don't recognize Lento. Fair enough, Lento pulls his robe to reveal part of his face, then calls the guards by their names, Jalu and Dre. Lento! The guards are lost for words after seeing the young adventurer. There are lots of questions from both sides about his looks, the state of the village, which is boring as always, and most importantly, who is this girl that Lento has brought home? Lorraine introduces herself to them and calls herself Lento's partner, from Malt. Partner? Be careful with your choice of words, Lorraine. As they hear that Lento is a partner, every other thing they had in mind suddenly becomes less important. If only they knew. Dre suddenly rushes into the village to inform the mayor and everyone that Lento is home, and came with a partner this time. Lento tries to explain this misunderstanding to Jalu, but Lorraine stops him. Maybe pretending to be his wife would give her better access to the village. She likes the village scenery and wants to explore, after all. Lorraine is fascinated by how the village looks. She notices something on the wall. It's soaked with medicines used to ward off demons. Lento and Jalu tell her it's from the medicine woman in the village, but they don't realize how powerful it is. Lorraine tests the magic by using fire on the wall. It reveals a symbol common to people who have reached the level of witchcraft. A rural setting with such a powerful medicine woman fascinates Lorraine. She simply cannot wait to meet the medicine woman that Lento called Grandma God. First, she has to enter the village. She didn't find that difficult at all. She is Lento's wife after all. Lento's arrival in the village has spread like wildfire, even more so because of his wife. There's a mixture of happiness and healthy jealousy. Lento couldn't even notice things about women before leaving the village. A wildfire burns everywhere without discrimination, and the news spread in that exact manner. News of Lento soon reaches the ears of Lily and Fadi, 2 girls who have a thing or two for Lento. As expected, the girls are very furious. Lento, the man who couldn't even notice their moves on him, suddenly has a wife? Impossible. Honey candy on St. Altos Day? Lento didn't notice. Inviting Lento to spend time together at the village festival? He still didn't have a clue. They previously agreed that one of them would get Lento and the other, whoever it turns out to be, would be satisfied and happy. And this Lento brought a wife back. In their anger, they storm Lento's home with a thing or two in mind for him. They get to the house but only find Lorraine there, the girl he chose over them. They feel pacified and somewhat confused when Lorraine introduces herself as Lento's friend and not a partner. Lento and Lorraine earlier explained the confusion to his parents, so the secret is out anyway. Lorraine sees what's happening and understands the girls also suffered from Lento's indifference to the opposite sex. She asks to have a chat with them about Lento, the things he did in the village and the city of Malt. Meanwhile, the sought-after adventurer is having a conversation with his parents, Ingo Fina and Glyda Fina, the mayor of the city and his wife. The conversation is about Lorraine, as they insist Lento shouldn't just bring in a stranger whom he shares no emotional connection with. Parents, am I right? Lento insists that his relationship with Lorraine is purely work-related as they share a common goal, becoming a mithril class adventurer. Gilda reminds her husband that he has something of great importance to discuss with Lento. He remembers but opts to discuss it with the captain of hunters and his mother first, as it concerns the entire village. The captain is in the woods with a few other hunters. Despite being away from the village, news of Lento's arrival has gotten to him. He shoots another target with deadly precision. This is the 10th catch of the day. His hunting crew have also caught a lot of meat and they're heading back to the village. Just like everyone in the village, they're discussing Lento's return and the wife he brought with him. The young hunters can't believe it, but then again, it would finally give them a chance with Lily and Fadi. The captain encourages them to just have a great night at the feast being prepared tonight. They're so deep in talks that it takes them a while to notice the giant skeleton in their village. The brave captain, ready to protect the village, quickly charges at the skeleton by first climbing onto a roof to give him better aim. Then he looks down and sees his granddaughters, Lily and Fadi, discussing with the strange girl. Why are they so relaxed? Lorraine explains to the relieved captain that she cast an illusion spell in form of a skeleton, so she could explain Lento's adventures to the ladies. Surprisingly, the captain takes it well and asks her to repeat it at the festival. Lily and Fari are called to help with the preparation for the night's festival, and Lorraine offers to help too. The girls are getting along with each other. Some distance away, the village's medicine woman is impressed by Lorraine's illusion spell and feels a wave of nostalgia. It's the woman who cast a spell on the walls, and she decides to pay more attention to the young sorceress. What effect would the medicine woman have on Lorraine as a sorceress? What important announcement does Lento's parents have in mind? And how could it affect his plans? Okay everyone, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed watching it. Remember to leave a comment requesting part 8, leave a like, and subscribe for more. Don't forget to turn on notifications too. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.